More than 4,500 people remain unaccounted for in the wake of Cyclone Gabrielle. Police have set up a specialist team of 80 staff to cross-reference and search for those people. 100,000 homes still have no power. 9,000 people are displaced in Hawke's Bay alone. Several small communities remain cut off and isolated in Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti, and temporary morgues have been set up at the port in Napier and at Hawke's Bay Hospital. The Navy's HMNZS Canterbury is on its way to Hawke's Bay to help with those relief efforts. And Gisborne District Council says people can use water again, but to restrict use to drinking, short showers and food preparation. Floodwaters, though, are a different story. Te Whatu Ora is warning of gastroenteritis in floodwater, and it's urging people to keep their distance from it as it could be contaminated. It has been a tragic and shocking week for the country and a gruelling test for an emergency management minister who's been in the job for just 7 months. Kieran McAnulty joins us from his electorate, part of which is also in a state of emergency. Tēnā koe, Minister. Welcome to Newshub Nation.
Thank you. Good morning.
I want to start with, just by touching on the death toll in this disaster. Do you have a confirmation this morning of the number of people who are confirmed dead? We are seeing reports of 9.
I haven't received confirmation this morning of any additional deaths to the toll. Obviously, 8 as it stands is a tragedy by itself. We are anticipating that it's possible there are more, but I can't confirm that there is any additional ones as I haven't received a briefing, I'm afraid.
Okay. Minister, I was out in the Hawke's Bay yesterday and you could start to feel the frustration sort of creeping in. Do you feel that, Minister? Do you feel it yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a natural reaction to what is a devastating weather event. We still have parts of the country that can't communicate with their loved ones. We still have parts of the country that don't have access to power. Water's limited. It's an incredibly frustrating situation. That's a natural reaction to this. But it's important for us to not let that frustration cloud our determination to do whatever we can and support the local crews on the ground to give people their essential needs in the first instance, and then start to plan and provide what they need in the medium and long term.
Ian, how are you going with providing those sort of essential needs, I suppose, for people? We spoke to a woman yesterday who had left the Esk Valley. She was with her family. I think there were 12 of them and their dogs sharing accommodation at a camping ground. She had a few days there, but she didn't know what was going to happen next. So those needs are widespread and they are complex, aren't they, Minister?
They're incredibly complex, and the need is widespread. It goes as far north to the top of the Northland, all the way down to here in Wairoa, and each region has different needs. They're in different stages of the response. Some are already in recovery, and there's still emergency processes underway in the likes of Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. So this is a massive operation, an incredibly complex thing, and it's really important that we make sure that central government agencies continue to work together, are linked in on the ground, are getting that feedback from the local responders, and that we can respond accordingly. For example, in Tairāwhiti, they highlighted that water was going to be an issue. The Defence Force was able to engage to provide that essential coverage until we were able to get some supply, some more regular supply set up. The same situation in Hawke's Bay. I was particularly concerned about Wairoa, for example. They were cut off completely for 2 days to begin with. We couldn't get any communications in. We couldn't get any helicopters in because the weather wouldn't let us. These are massive issues to deal with and incredibly complex.
They are, and I suppose what people are looking for at the moment from you, from central government, is some clarity, an idea about, you know, they may be in these sort of emergency situations. How long could that last for, Minister? Are we talking weeks? I know after Christchurch, I think that national state of emergency was in place for around 7 weeks. Is this going to be a long haul?
Well, we'll review the status of the state of national emergency every 7 days. So it's in place for 7 days, and then we'll review it. And if there's the need for that, we'll extend it for another 7 days. We're not going to go beyond that 7-day period. But after that, once we've done the initial response, we'll be able to look at how central government can continue to coordinate the recovery and welfare stages of that.
Yeah.
And so there's a stage where you can declare a national transition period, and you'll note that after the 2016 Kaikoura earthquake, for example, a national state of emergency wasn't declared, but in order to make sure that the recovery was as efficient and streamlined as possible, a national transition period was declared. So that's an option available to us to make sure that we continue the focus over that long period that it will take.
Minister, if I am sitting in emergency accommodation right now and I'm listening to this, I'm still not clear, I suppose, about what those people should expect. Are you telling them just to settle in for the long haul? It could be weeks before, their wider needs are met. We're going to remain in this emergency situation for a while, Minister. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that it would be dishonest of me to give them a timeline as to when they can expect to be back in their homes or when they can expect to be in temporary accommodation of a more permanent manner. But I can reassure them that we will look after them, and that when we can find them temporary accommodation where they can stay there until they're able to move back into their homes, we will get them in there. We've done that in Bulla when they had their flooding, we've done it in Nelson, we've done it in Marlborough, and we'll do it now.
Well, Minister, I want to circle back. I know that will be hopefully reassuring to some of those people, Minister. It is good to hear that from you. I want to circle back to Wairoa because I'm wondering, that was cut off, the communication was cut off there for days. Why was that? Did they have a satellite phone there? If they didn't, why didn't they? Because that is very difficult, isn't it, when you're trying to allocate resources, that communication is vital.
I can honestly say it caused incredible anxiety for all of us, knowing that there were areas that were affected and we couldn't get in to find out exactly what the situation was. That's why when I was in Hawke's Bay yesterday, the Prime Minister went to Esk Valley. I made a trip specifically to go to Wairoa and talk to the Mayor because it was of such concern. And it was just, as the Mayor said himself, it was just the perfect storm, the perfect set of circumstances to put them in that situation. All the roads were damaged. The weather was such that we couldn't send helicopters in. The communication and power was out. The satellite phones that they had couldn't work in the atmospheric conditions that were there. It was just a total black spot. And that's a horrific situation for them to be in. And it's awful for everyone when they want to help, but they don't know what they need and they can't get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds, so they did have a satellite phone, it's just that they were not able to use that, Minister.
That's right. But it was incredibly encouraging to see on the ground in Wairoa how determined and committed they were to get back on their feet. We've been able to clear a road link back up to Gisborne, which in turn has a road link to Opotiki, so essential supplies are able to come in. We had fuel flowing in yesterday by helicopter. We've got more coming in today. They're getting the essentials they need. The supermarket's restocking. The water is there, the army's there, the rapid response team is there. They were in good spirits yesterday. There's a massive job ahead of them. Pretty much the northern part, on the northern side of the river of Wairoa, all of it needs cleaning up and clearing. That job's underway. And so to go from that situation where just a massive question as to what's going on there, absolute despair, and then I just saw all this optimism and hope and determination on the ground, it was incredibly reassuring.
Minister, I want to turn to Craig Wilson, who we just heard from. He is in Puketapu. He has got a massive clean-up ahead. They have survived the waters that came through his land. But yeah, as you will have heard, he's now got 12 or 13 people staying with him. They want to get on with the clean-up. And they're asking for that red tape, I suppose, to be cut by the council or by central government. Is that a question, that you can answer or that you can look at in the immediate future for him?
Well, first of all, I just want to say my heart goes out to those guys. I mean, this is the fruit bowl of the country. They feed us, they feed the world, they employ so many people, and it's just absolutely gut-wrenching to see what's happened to them. But I can offer some reassurance that now that, given that we've declared a state of national emergency, that does give us some flexibility to be able to just get on with the job ahead. So we want to be able to make it incredibly clear to those guys to exactly what they can do within what parameters, so they can just get on with rebuilding and recovery, and also make sure, just as by way of reassurance, But the funding that the government has put into the mayoral or regional relief funds there is an initial contribution, and it's only a drop in the bucket of the total amount of support that we'll be able to provide across the various government agencies. But we didn't want to wait around. We just wanted to get an initial contribution into those funds so we can get it out to the community as much as possible.
Yep.
So whilst it is an equal record amount, $1 million for Tairāwhiti and $1 million for Hawke's Bay, it's just the start.
Well, Minister Craig doesn't want to wait around. He wants to get in and burn that slash. When do you think that he and others like him in that situation will be able to start doing that?
Well, there's assistance that central government provide, and there's information that local government can provide. And what we don't want is there to be any confusion as to what's going on and what they can do. We'll make sure that as soon as possible they know exactly where they stand and what they can do. But in addition to that, what assistance we can provide, because it's incredibly overwhelming when people look at the absolute devastation on their land and on their business operations and think, right, this is all on us. Well, it might not be. We might be able to help in certain areas. So part of being able to give that reassurance is also letting them know what assistance we can provide them as well.
Well, when will they know? Because they want to get started now.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. Of course they do. At the moment, obviously, our focus has been on the emergency response. But as time goes on, and certainly in other areas, because they have moved into the recovery already, we need to be as clear as possible as to what they can do. And I can give the reassurance that as soon as we're able to, we'll let them know where they stand and what they can get on with.
Minister, I want to talk to you because one of the issues that Craig was facing was slash. You have supported an inquiry into the sort of long-standing issue. Why has it taken so long to attack this head on? Yeah,
this has been an issue that's been in these areas, in particular the East Cape, Tairāwhiti area, for over 10 years at least. It's been of concern to that area. I was standing next to the Prime Minister at the podium in the Beehive when he gave the reassurance to people that he knows that this is a problem that needs to be fixed and that he's backing this to be sorted. And not only as Emergency Management Minister, but now also Minister of Rural Communities and a rural MP. That came as a great relief to me, because this has been an issue that's been floating around for a while. Every single event that I've attended as Minister, be it at the top of the South Island or in the North Island, to varying degrees, slash has been there. We recognise that the forestry industry does have a legitimate reason for regenerating the ground by leaving slash, but it doesn't matter how legitimate the reason is. If it rains and it causes issues and it affects communities and infrastructure, it's clearly not good enough. So with the Prime Minister's backing, I'm confident we'll be able to get into that issue and come up with a solution. It has to be practical, and it has to be one that gives reassurance to these communities.
Well, that will give reassurance to some of those people affected, I'm sure. That is Emergency Management Minister Kieran McAnulty.
All right, time now for our first political panel of the year. I'm joined by former Green MP Sue Bradford, senior NBR journalist Dita Daboni, and former National Party leader Simon Bridges, who is now CEO of the Auckland Business Chamber. Tēnā koutou, welcome to the program. Where do you start when you're faced with this kind of scale of disaster, Simon? Have you actually come to grips with that scale?
Well, I suppose you do exactly what they are doing. I think right now you have to say it's hard to fault what the political leaders have done. They've got it on the ground, they're understanding what's happening, and they're providing the empathy and support that, I'm sure we all want them to do. I think they do have to grip it up, though, and make sure that they're also walking while they chew gum, if I can put it that way. And what I really mean by that is there are really big transport problems, many billions of dollars worth, the energy issues, communications issues, not to mention the basics. And I think over time, the attention will turn to those, and they will need to ensure that they've been working on practical solutions to those.
But in the short term, we're asking the Emergency Management Minister then, Sue, about reassurance for those people who have been displaced and are sort of probably not even be able to watch this because of technological difficulties. But what should the government be saying to them? I mean, Kieran McAnulty says, we're going to help you, but how? What should they be doing?
Well, there's a massive communications issue going on here. As we all know, many people, and I'm one of them, because I live in a rural area where we've been out of communication all week because no internet, no cell phone.
Right.
Even the local community defence centre doesn't know what's going on. has a lack of information, and that's North Auckland. So there's whole areas that are out of communication. The local radio station up our way, that was all we could get on the transistor. The only news was about Hawke's Bay, nothing about what's happening in Auckland or Northland. And so there's this huge communication gaps that I think of probably tens of thousands of people are still going through. Why don't they have simple things like information like this? The Minister was giving great information just now for affected people in the district, but why don't they have places where people can see that information? What more can be done?
So are you, as somebody who's experiencing this, you're saying that there's an information gap for the local residents? I mean, because we're having so many crises, our attention is shifting all the time. That's
right, and because obviously the crisis in Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay is massive, and my heart goes out to the people down there. I mean, it's just dreadful what's been happening in West Auckland as well. Just tragic. But there's whole parts of Northland and North Auckland that are still out of communication and people without housing. And it feels like up there it's just forgotten. People feel forgotten up there, I think, because the focus has moved. But it's for the government, I think it's a mission to communicate this good stuff, what we're doing.
Did the Emergency Management Minister reassure you just then, or do you still feel left out?
To some extent. I mean, like Simon said, I think they're doing a good job. This Labor government, of the last two governments, emergency management seems to be their thing. It's more a matter of the long-term strategies where there's gaps. But emergency management, they're pretty good at. But I hope there's thorough reviews with the Auckland flooding a few weeks ago. There were a lot of communication problems there too.
But in the meantime, it is the response and it is the recovery. So, Dita, the recovery for people like Craig Wilson, who we just saw, as the Minister said, in the fruit bowl of New Zealand, is a massive. It's a massive task. And what's that going to mean for food availability for us?
It's going to have a big impact on food availability. It's going to have inflationary outcomes as well for food for consumers. But as someone, I went down to Hawke's Bay to talk to apple growers just at the end of last year, because the export market is about to tip to $1 billion.
Right.
And because there's so much money coming in and they're doing very well, they had planted new cultivars, they have new ways of growing apples that are, setting themselves up to be robotically picked and stuff. So they've put a whole lot of investment in there. That's,
that could be gone, right?
That could be gone.
Yeah.
So it's really catastrophic from that perspective.
The other issue for the people down there, Simon, is there's a lot of uninsured people as well, or underinsured people. So is that the role of government to come in and top that up?
It's such a difficult one. I'm involved with that, the Chamber, with the government around, business relief around the floods. I mean, it's really surprising. There's a lot of people, who are insured. There's a lot who are only partially insured. Maybe they thought they were, but actually the terms of their contract aren't quite, cover the bill. And then, look, like you say, there's actually a surprising number that aren't. It's easy to be judgmental about that. I sit there and say, though, actually, if you think about the last few years, COVID, what they've had on them, you can kind of understand how maybe the insurance went by the wayside. I don't know that it is for government at a wholesale level.
Right.
Clearly, we're going to have reviews, though, and I think what we will see from that is changes to how we do insurance.
Dita, have there been any messaging from the government about, topping up insurance or COVID-style handouts or anything? I mean, I know Grant Robertson was in town recently.
He was yesterday at Simon's event, and he basically said that the reinsurers of New Zealand insurers are having their own problems just because of the number of catastrophes around the world, and a lot of it comes back to climate change. They're tightening the screws, so our insurers will eventually have to.
Okay, and just really quickly, Sue Bradford, I mean, for the non-insured, I mean, should there be a COVID-style help out?
Well, absolutely. Just making sure people have somewhere to live and food to eat becomes, and a secure roof over their heads is the most basic thing, and everyone deserves that. And the people who will suffer the most long term are the poorest and the people without housing, and they need every bit of support the government can give them.
Deal with the needs, not necessarily full insurance, and I think government has a role in that. Well, no more than a role of responsibility.
All right, lots to come. We'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much to the panel.